Okay, so welcome everyone again to our sixth and final virtual session of our Adult 101 Life Skills Workshop series. Today, we will be going over personal organization and time management with Pam Pose from Sacramento City College. So first, just a little housekeeping. If you missed any of our previous sessions, the recordings are available on our website. I will put the link in the chat, but it is www.saclibrary.org/adult101. The website should be updated with the last two session recordings by the end of this week. Before we end today, I will put a survey link in the chat, and we really appreciate you completing the survey as it will communicate to the State Library how you like this program and help us do even better in the future. Wanted to let you know again, I am actively working on sending out the final digital certificates for sessions already completed, and I will be working on today's session as well. So if you would like a digital certificate, please put your first name and last initial in the chat, unless you have your first name and last initial in your Zoom name, just so that Monica can capture that for our attendance and make sure that you get your digital certificate. So I'm Crystal Miles. I should have said that first. I work for Sacramento Public Library, and my colleague Monica Latona is also here today. Monica will be monitoring the chat and helping Pam with any chats or conversations and questions that are happening there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started, and I will pass it over to Pam Pose.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a second. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So yes, I am having, great, hold on. I'm having technical difficulties, so let me just get everything set up a little bit. No, hold on, share. But I'm really excited to be here. Okay, that's got to move over there. Share, present, there it is. Present. Huzzah. Right, here we go, we're off. So again, my name is Pamela Pose, and I am a professor at Sacramento City College, just FYI, and I am the coordinator of the Makerspace there, which is a place where you can, if you're creative at all, you can make anything. I also run the Library and Information Technology program, which trains people to work in libraries. And then I'm also just a librarian at Sacramento City College. So let's get going. So I just wanted to get a sense in the chat is, and I'm so excited to be here because I just love teaching all this stuff. All right, so have any of you attended the other sessions? I'm just curious. So if you want to write in the chat whether you've attended, yep. Yes, all of them. All right, looks good. All right, so there will probably be a little bit of redundancy, but it's not a bad thing actually, because I'm going to present it in a slightly different way. Redundancy, it's going to help you retain information at times. It's just not a bad thing. And also it's just sort of, especially the job hunting stuff. So this is actually going to be in two parts. We've got part one, and this is organizational and practical tips and life hacks. And then part two is actually going to be job hunting, extra job hunting stuff. So how many of you feel like you're pretty well organized? You can respond. Do you think about being organized all the time? Sometimes. What about like in real life and versus online? Which one do you think you're more organized in? Or neither? 50% in both. Good answer. Both equally. All right, good. So the importance of being organized is it really helps reduce your stress and it helps you increase productivity. So when you're overwhelmed both with your physical environment and online environment, Jason, are you one of my library tech students? Anyways, it's super stressful when you're overwhelmed, and like if you can't find something, it really is hard on your brain, and it increases your stress level and everything like that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm not saying this to make anyone feel inadequate or anything. I'm like a professor and a mother, and I run a small business, and I'm an author and everything like that. And I could not do everything that I do without being fairly well organized. Although I always like to tell people I am by no means perfect, and everything like that. So, for example, we are actually moving houses like today, and the other morning I put something in a sink and turn the water on, and I was like, oh, I'm going to come back to get it in just a second, and you all can guess what happened. And so we had a sink overflow in our house. That was lots of fun. Okay, so number one tip, and this is sort of a quick thing. Your parents are right. You really should make your bed every day. There's actually scientific research that says that it's just better for your mental health, and you're going to be happier if you make your bed for a number of reasons. It's nice to climb into at night when it's all made, but also if you need to get anything done in like your bedroom, for example, and your bed is messy, then it just makes it harder. You have to clean that up before you can get started on your other project. So it's just better if you make your bed every day. And then here's the next tip. So in terms of getting organized, figuring out your categories, that's the most important thing. And so you have to figure out what your categories are, and your categories are going to vary depending on where you are. So like your categories in your house are going to be different versus your categories online. So let's talk about your homes. What are some of the categories of like stuff? If you were to make big piles of stuff in your house, what would your categories be? Anyone? Bueller? Okay, those are also ways to organize, but like categories of stuff. So I'm just going to give an example of like my garage, for example. So there we go, clothes. From the list, no worries. So like my garage at one point, I organized my garage, stationery, a whole section of stationery. And I realized that there were like different zones in my garage. And then once I figured that out, then you have a place for everything. So I appreciate the books, stationery. So like in my garage, we had like camping equipment, tools, Christmas decorations, craft supplies, and hardware, I think. These are all ways that you can organize things. So we have alphabetically, that's pretty classic. Like with your books, for example, you may do that either title or author. If you're like playing library, chronologically means you're going to put them in order by time. Color is really useful. I'll talk about color later. Geographically, immediacy, importance. Sometimes it's easier to organize things by people rather than by a category, like who it's coming from. The purpose or function, and then the type, for example, photos versus documents. And then the top level categories should be really general. So like work or school and home. And then the things that you do most frequently at the top level. And then you're going to use at least some of the same categories everywhere possible. For example, email, desktop, paper. So I'm curious, have any of you gotten into the whole Marie Kondo? I forget what the book she created. There was a Netflix show, and she was talking about how to organize everything. And That's it, the joy of keeping tidy. Very good. So I don't necessarily agree with her about everything. I do think if you've got a whole bunch of stuff in your house, I'll come back to this in a second. It is worth actually pulling everything out and putting it in a big pile that are the same type of things. And I think that's a good thing to do. So like pulling out all your books, pulling out all your clothes, and then you can really find the duplicates and everything in all of your stuff. So, so that's really a useful thing. I think she said, as a librarian, I'm like, no, I can't do that. I think she said like, you should have like 30 books. And I'm like, nope, it's not gonna happen. Anyway, but I do like the fact that she pulls, as she has categories, she actually has categories already created. And then she just helps people get organized. But that's one of the things is you pull everything out from that one category, like all your paperwork, all your books, and put them in one area and go through them so that you see it all at the same time. And then every once in a while, you have to reevaluate your system periodically to look for duplicates, because you're going to find, especially like online, I'll create folders for things. The one that I end up finding all over the place is like photos. And so, or images, and it turns up in different places and everything. And then I need to like move stuff and everything. So every once in a while you have to go through and like look at your stuff and be like, oh, okay, that's not working, or figuring out what works and wasn't. This is one of my favorite tricks. So I have what I call delete later folders, and I have them in my email. I have a folder on my desktop. I actually have a physical folder in real life sometimes. And this really reduces my mental stress a lot. So what it is these are the things that you need to hold on to for like 2 weeks, and you're probably not going to have to come back to them. You eventually you're going to want to get rid of them and just delete them all. And so if you set up a delete later folder in those places, that's a really great place. So especially in my email, for emails that I receive where I'm like, yeah, I may need to pay attention to that event for a little while, but then after that, I can get rid of it. And so especially once you set that up, if you put stuff in it, then you can just go in and delete like a chunk of stuff based on date is usually what I'm doing. So anything older than like a month old in that folder of any variety, you can get rid of. So I use those all the time. And then color coding is a really useful way to organize everything. And then I put dates on everything. So let's see if this is going to work for me. So I just wanted to show you color coding a little bit, and also dates. So this is, we're going to wait for it to connect, and hopefully it'll play nice. So this is Canvas, which is, I work for Los Rios. So this is the system that Los Rios uses for all the online and even in-person classes that have an online part. It's the learning management system. And I think actually a lot of the high schools are doing this. So you can see though, so I have, these are classes I actually teach. So I'm the person who loaded the photo. But you notice that you can actually change the color on these, and you can actually enter a hex code if you really want to get crazy with it. For example, classes that I teach in the spring, I give a green, I make green. Ones that I teach in the fall, I make orange. And that sort of helps me keep track of things a long time. Here, let's look at this. Courses, go to all courses. Although I might not, yeah, you can't really see it as well past enrollments. So you can see everything that, and this is also where you see where I'm using dates. So 22 is the year, spring. This is the name of the course. And then I put my name on it. This is green. And so you can see this makes it easier to keep track of, like, looking at this, I can see this has got like orange or red. These are all fall courses. So fall, fall, fall. The green ones are all spring, spring, spring. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, no? Good. There we go. Hey, it worked. Okay. And then, like I said, especially putting dates on everything is really critical for staying on top of everything, especially as time passes. Okay, let's see. Come on. Come on, little computer. Oops. There we go. Okay, let's go. Here we're back on track. Here we go. So again, here we're into general organizational tips. And like, you need to figure out whatever color system works for you. And it's going to depend on like what colors you have available, things like that. For example, at work, I have all of the physical folders that I use, and every different categories of my areas of my job have different colors. So like the library tech program, all the folders are yellow. So it just makes it easier for me to see like, oh, that's a library tech folder and I can find that. Or the makerspace stuff is all red. And it just makes it easier to find everything if it's color coded, especially in certain situations. So this is a really good thing. If there is something that you are never going to have to look at again and you don't want to do, get rid of it the first time, because that way you don't have to come back and get rid of it later. Because getting rid of things is actually really important. It takes a lot of time and energy. And so if you can, so like on my phone, for example, with all the, because I am an artist as well. And so I have, I swear to God, like 10 to 20,000 photos on my phone. So I try to delete as I go so that they don't end up in my thing. And then later on, I'm like, well, this was a bad photo that I never needed to see again. So that's really important. This is really important, especially in your house. If you have an area of your house that is constantly cluttered, it just means that it doesn't matter how many organizational boxes and everything that you get, you really have too much stuff in that area and you need to try to get rid of it. Okay. And then it'll be easier to keep clean. So if you have a big task, you really need to try to break it into small chunks. So for example, cleaning your garage, don't say I need to clean the garage because it may just be too much. Instead, say, I need to clean that one shelf in the garage, and then maybe make a list of different areas and how you may need to break it down, and then just change it as you go, because you may find some of it goes faster, some of it goes slower. And then, as always, figure out your categories. And then naming folders on your computer. Particularly, I think this would also apply in real life if you're using paper folders, which I'm guessing most of you don't, but you never know if you end up in a job where actually there is paperwork, then you're going to need to find a way to do this as well. You need to come up with a naming system for your files and put dates on everything, and then control sorting with numbers and characters. So I'm actually, let's see if I can get, all right. So I'm going to show you what I mean by this. There we go. With Dropbox, my Dropbox. So let's see. Nope. Okay. So these are my folders. Okay. So these are all the folders I have in Dropbox. This is actually where I store a lot of my artwork and stuff like that. So you notice that, so when I say, so I have a system that I've really come up with. So you can see the stuff at the top is like stuff that I really need to, so we're moving right now, for example. So that's at the top. How you control that is by controlling the characters at the beginning of your file name. So if you look on, if you have a keyboard, or just sort of think of a keyboard, how sorting order goes is it's going to use the characters along the top first, meaning like the exclamation point, the @ sign, the pound sign, all those characters are first, then the numbers, and then letters. So you can see I am controlling how this sorts and displays by using characters. So these are all you can see the ones that have letters and numbers and stuff in front of them are the ones that I'm trying to keep track of more carefully. And then this is sort of my more just sort of generic stuff down at the bottom. And so is all this making sense to you all? So you can see the things with the exclamation point are all going first, because that's the first thing that we'll sort. And then numbers are next. So, and you can see this is dated. So, and then I get under zeros to control categories of different things. So let's see if, where is it? Okay, so this is my, let's see if it'll work. Oh, there it went. Okay, so let's see, let's look at my art stuff, for example. Did it work? No, come on. Yay, there it is. So I'm where I need to be. So you can see, here is the exclamation point. These are the things that I want to keep at the top. And then these are the same category of things. And then 1, and then 3, and then 4. And then I have stuff down here. So you can see how the numbers at the beginning will help control how things sort. And that works on pretty much any computer, unless there's a way that you can arrange it. And so that will allow you to do it. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Okay, I don't need to rate that. Thank you very much. Okay. Share, present. There we go. Okay. Yep. So does that make sense to everybody? Yes, no, maybe. I need to think about it. I never realized there were so many ways to organize. Yes, this is for people who, when you think about this all the time, you know that you really enjoy organizing things. Okay, so this is another thing that's really useful in terms of how you're naming your folders. And this, again, this is really on your computer, although you can also do this in real life. So sometimes you actually need to have redundant information in your file or folder names, so that when you search for something, then it you can tell what you're looking at. So for example, I'm going to use photos again. So if I do a search for photo folders in Dropbox, if I haven't actually named the folder something other than photos, then I'm going to be like, I don't know about photos. So I could have multiple folders named photos. But if I put, so often I'll actually put like photos/LIBT or photos-work or photos home, so that because I want photos to appear in the list where the P is. And if I happen to look for it or I don't know where I am, it's really sort of leaving breadcrumbs for you so that you can tell where you are and what you're looking at on your computer. Okay, this is something that unfortunately I can't show you because I wanted to show you, but I assume that everyone is familiar with index cards. Yes? A little 3x5, generally 3x5 pieces of paper. Very good. All right. So I like, and actually what I do, either you can buy them, they're half size index cards. So instead of 3x5, they are 2x3. And I use those to keep track of my to-do list, essentially. Because, and I'm using all sorts of things to keep myself organized, but this one I really like because I actually like something physical that I can see in front of me, because what'll happen is I'll go into work, for example, and I'll think I'll be focused, and then an email will open, and then it's the sort of if you give a mouse a muffin scenario at work where you start getting lost and go down a rabbit hole of, well, I need to answer that email, but first I need to find the folder that the email that has the data that I need, and then where is that folder and everything like that. So if I have a physical piece of paper in front of me, then then that really helps keep me on task for my to-do list. So this is my favorite thing to do as a to-do list. And so at the top of the card, I put a date on the card on the upper right, and then on the left, I put the general category on the left. And then underneath, I'll put a specific piece of I'll either put like one task on there if it's a small task, or I'll put, like, if it's a big task, I'll use the same information at the top of every card and then have different individual cards for different pieces of what I'm trying to get done. So for example, sometimes I have big art projects that are like one thing, but there are multiple pieces of it that I'm working on. And so then I'll have like one big card that'll have like t-shirt quilt, and then underneath, and then that's the big category. And then underneath, I'll have like, choose the t-shirts that I want to put in the quilt. And then on another card, I'll have find the backing that I need to iron onto the t-shirts, and then cut the t-shirts. And you see how does that make sense to everybody? Then I'm breaking the big task down into smaller chunks. Does that make sense? Okay. And then, very good. Okay. So, and then if you either can have like one card for a small task or multiple cards for really big tasks. And then the other thing is you can actually get, again, you can get these in different colors. Like if you look on Amazon or go to an office supply store, you can actually find baby index cards, and they come in different colors, so you can have stuff for different colors. So I could have one color for work and one color for art, for example, and then that will help you sort of keep track of what is what. And then this is really the benefit. So I know that people love bullet journals, and I completely get that. But I really love these because you can shuffle them as your tasks change, so that you can reprioritize them. That's really one of the benefits of this. Whereas if you have a bullet journal, I think, I'm use a bullet journal, but you need to keep writing things on the page if you don't finish a task. So the nice thing is you can keep like your index card there until you finish the task. And that way you don't have to rewrite the same thing over and over again as you might need to do with a journal. Okay. And then this is really, really useful. So what happens to me is like I'm working and everything, and sometimes like at the end of the day, I've really got flow and everything, but it's time to go home. And then in the morning when I arrive, if I'm not really thinking about it, I'll just sort of sit down on my desk and like not really pay attention. And then I just start out working on whatever is in front of me. And especially if you're tired, when you're tired, you're like, I have problems when I'm tired. Like there's certain things I can do in my sleep. Like I've been a librarian for a really long time, so I can always pretty much work the reference desk and do a good job because it doesn't require any ability to prioritize things. It's like swimming. It's like a fish swimming at the reference desk. Like this is what I'm used to. I've done it so long. I don't have the ability to prioritize when I'm tired. So the really cool thing, another really cool thing about these is you can lay them out at the end of the day so that when you get there the next day in the morning, you have your task, what you're working on, and you can get to work right away if you want to. And then the other thing that's useful is you can save them and help keep track of what you've accomplished, or I think someone said rip them up, so that's satisfying as well. You and everything like that. It sort of depends. But I know, for example, I have to do a self-study where essentially it's my performance evaluation, and I have to write this big document for 3 years where I keep track of what I've been doing. And so having a set of little cards that are like, oh, you worked on this project and this project and this project, then it's nice to keep track of what you've accomplished. Okay. And then, like I said, delete later folders in every workspace. One particular thing that's really useful for delete later folders is PDFs. So, if you often in Google Docs, are people using Google Docs? Anyone? Yep. Okay, so if you print sometimes, you have to, if you print, it'll print it as a PDF. You don't actually want to keep the PDF, and you end up with like 20 different PDFs that are all slightly different and everything like that, and you don't need to keep track of them. You can actually put the PDFs in the delete later folder, and then you don't have to, not going to clutter up your workspace, and then it can go in and delete all the PDFs every once in a while. So that's a really useful one. And same thing with Microsoft Word. If you're putting something as a PDF because you want to retain the formatting, you actually don't want to hold on to the PDF if you're going to have to update it later. You really want to hold on to the original document. And so you can, you're going to want to just hold on to the PDFs in the delete later folder, and then just hold on to the original document. Okay, so I use different what I call my online brains to stay organized. So you all have seen my Dropbox, so Evernote, okay, and everybody is using different things. So I'm not saying that you all need to use Evernote, but I find it really handy, and I'm going to show you a tool in Evernote that's really useful that may get you to use it. And so, for example, I have work stuff because our work uses Google. So I have a lot of work stuff in Google. I have a lot of home stuff in Evernote. And then my art stuff, a lot of that stuff. And then all my photos are on Dropbox. And then one of the things that I love about why I love Evernote, one of the reasons why I do, is because I have random home stuff in here that helps me remember stuff. So for example, I often make little notes in Evernote, and then I use them when I go to Home Depot. Like my husband has put like the filter sizes we need for our house, our air filters, and that way when I go to Home Depot, I'm not like, damn, I don't know what size air filters I need. Or like I was ordering sheets, and then I had written down the size of our bed. And I finally verified that we have a regular king size bed, not a California king. It was easy for me to do because I knew it was an Evernote. Okay, so I like Evernote for that. Again, everyone, hello Molly, welcome. And then Evernote keeps things in a little notebooks. They keep adding little features and everything. You're going to see I have. I also save a lot of web articles. This is sort of my web library. You can see I'm using the same thing that I do everywhere. So the folders folders that I'm using all the time all have a 0 in front of it, so that will pop to the top of the list, and then the rest of the list just sorts itself. But remember, I told you that you need to go through every once in a while and get rid of things. Look, I have COVID-19 here, and I have COVID-19 here. So that's why you need to do that every once in a while, because you're going to, and I'm like, oh, okay, you can move things around. It's basically an online hard drive, essentially, is what Evernote is, with extra features in there. Okay. So that's one. And then, like I said, Google, I have like 8 Google accounts for various reasons. And so anyway, but I'm surprised sometimes my brain doesn't explode. All right. Okay, here we go. Anytime. There we go. So, and then this is actually sort of important. So I have, you should really have more than one browser loaded on your computer. So what, oh, and there's actually one I didn't put on here. Anyone know one of the big ones that I left out goes with Apple products? Anyone? Safari. Okay. So just to reiterate what a browser is, Internet Explorer Edge is now Internet Explorer. They changed it to make it hip, as if anyone is really using using, I don't know very many people are using it. So just to clarify something in case any of you are confused, the browser is the computer program that connects you and allows you to look at the internet. Search engines are how you search on the internet. So Google's obviously a search engine, but what's the Bing is the one that is Microsoft, and I don't know very many people who use it. I will say, and I didn't put this in, I'll put it in the chat. Actually, I'll just here. I meant to do this and I forgot. So this is a search engine you can use. Give me a second. Yep. Okay. And I'm going to pull up. I'm still sharing, right? Yes. Okay. So this is my default search engine. This is a computer I don't use as much, so that's why it's doing Google. I highly recommend go, if you're trying to find, like when I'm doing like serious reference stuff, when I'm as a librarian, I'm like trying to find something fairly obscure, I'll use Google. But the day-to-day stuff, I use DuckDuckGo because it doesn't track you the way Google tracks you. So, like when you search for something and suddenly you see ads in places you don't expect, like, you look at any of you were on Facebook, or I suspect that most of you aren't using Facebook, but like you search for something on TikTok and suddenly on your computer it turns up. If you use DuckDuckGo to search for things, it won't turn up. And it doesn't matter as much, but certain categories of information that I tend to use this for. So if I'm doing anything related to my medical information or my health information, I use DuckDuckGo because I don't want that to turn up in places that I don't want. So for example, let's say you're at work or you're actually at home and you do a search in Google and you search for like, I don't know, muscle, like cannabis, something for cannabis or something like that. You're trying to do research on cannabis. At home, you're doing it, you use Google to search, and then you go into work and you're doing a search and your boss happens to walk by and the ads at the top of the screen, it could easily turn up as cannabis ads, which you may or may not want your boss to see. So medical information, the other one that I use is if I haven't bookmarked my bank, or I'm away from home and I need to access my bank on a website, I go to DuckDuckGo if I'm trying to find my banking information, because again, I don't want my financial information to turn up in Google. So, so those are the ones that I tend to use DuckDuckGo for, although I have it set as my default. And so it's really useful for that. So actually my next tip was the Evernote Web Clicker add-on. So I'm going to show you just how to do this really fast. So add-ons, if you don't know, so or they're sometimes called extensions. They're little things that you can add to your browser, Firefox. And I am using Firefox. That's a browser that I'm using. So here we go. So Evernote. So Evernote Web Clicker. And it's super easy to install. I actually have it installed. I'm going to show you how it works in a second. These are just little things that you add to your browser that add functionality to your browser. So another reason why I love Evernote is, I wanted to show you a real example. It is how I'm saving things easily in Evernote that I find online that I want to get back to. So let's see if this will work. No, I need to present. Hold on. Talk amongst yourselves. Present. Here we go. Here we go. Now it'll work. Hypothetically. Okay. So, this is a pretty standard article that you're going to see online. We've got all this. I just chose this randomly, 200 incredible life hacks that make life so much easier. These are totally clickbait articles, but you notice there's all this stuff on screen, yada, yada, yada. Maybe I want this information. So I've got the web clip loaded in the upper right corner of my screen. If I click that, and we're going to let it do its job, I have different options for saving this. So you can save the whole article. This is the really cool one, simplified article. All the stuff on screen is gone. The extra stuff that you don't want to see. So I use this sometimes just when I'm trying to read an article and I don't want to deal with all the waterproof your shoes. Anyway, beeswax talking. Full page. You've got the whole thing. You can just bookmark things, which I often do, or you can do a screenshot. And then you get to choose where it's going into in your, so I have like a whole food notebook in Evernote to save recipes and such that I find online. All right. So that is the Evernote, and I am not sponsored in any way, shape, or form by Evernote. I just really like it, and it helps save my brain because we are all well past our capacity. Our brains are not designed for the stuff that we're doing, so I'll take anything that will help me. Okay. So in terms of, I tend to think of this as something that happens as you get older, but I think it happens to everyone. It's just that as you get older, it's more likely to happen, and I'll explain why in a second. So it's often, especially with stuff like you use your keys or your phone or anything like that, it's not that you've actually forgotten it. It's that your brain never actually recorded where you put it to begin with. So there are a couple of strategies I use to do this. And the reason why I think it happens more, from what I understand, is it happens more often as you get older, is that your brain actually gets in many ways more efficient as you get older. And so you're not paying as much attention as you may have at one point. You don't need to pay as much attention as like when you're 2 years old and you're learning everything, what the world is completely. As you get older, your brain doesn't have to learn as much, and so it's just not going to pay as much attention. So it's really useful to have a place to put things that you use every day, your keys, your phone, your cat. If you could, your cat won't put up with that. The other thing that I do is, for example, if I'm getting out of my car and sometimes, like I have that moment of panic, or I'm going back to my car and I'm like, where did I put my keys? I don't know where my keys are. And you're like feeling all your pockets and everything. If when I get out of the car and everything, and then put my keys in my right front pocket, and then I say, putting keys in my right front pocket, I'm much more likely to remember where it is. We call it, it's not lost, we call it being in the fourth dimension. That's where it's gone. It's in a safe, or the other thing that we talk about is that in our house, we say it's in a safe place. We just don't know where it is, but it's safe. So that's really useful. And just in general, this is a really useful tip for all sorts of things, especially if you're studying and trying to learn things. The more multi-sensory you can go, the better. So like reading is good, but reading with an audio is better. A video is really good. And then weird things that you may not think of is smell. So if you're studying for a test, pick a flavor of gum and then chew the gum. And then when you take the test, chew the same flavor of gum, and it will should help you actually remember things, because you've got a more multi-sensory thing going on when you're actually trying to remember the information. All right, passwords. So it's really useful to come up with a system for your passwords, and only you should know the systems. But yeah, and chewing gum, definitely. There's something going on. I'm sort of fascinated. Chewing gum helps me focus. Like if I need to get something done, I'll just I'll chew gum constantly because it really helps me focus. I don't know why. And I'm really fascinated by like what evolutionary thing made chewing something where we would help us focus. But they actually, because it will actually allow kids to chew gum when they're taking standardized tests, because it does help people focus. Yeah, okay. So passwords. So come up with a system for your passwords. So like a keyboard pattern. So like if you like, you just need to pay attention to, like, you always capitalize the third letter in your password. The fourth letter is always a number. That special symbol is always the same thing as the number that you chose, something like that, or it's to the left, stuff like that. Is that making sense to people? So, or like you always do like four letters in a row to the side, something like that. Anyway, so I just know that this has helped me on multiple occasions, that having a system for my password if I don't have my phone or something like that, and I need to remember a password. If I know like most of it, I know where the numbers are and what the numbers are likely to be in my password, and that has helped me on a lot of occasions. For a new password, I always recommend, and I have helped so many people at the library figure out a new password. So I really recommend, when you're figuring out a new password, write it on a piece of paper to make sure it reads the requirements, and then type it in. Because if you try to just type in a password, I don't know about all of you, but I type fast enough that I don't always know what I've typed. So it helps to have it on a piece of paper, and then, like, you know, chew and swallow the piece of paper, or do whatever you need to do to what you need to do to get rid of that little piece of paper. But write it down on a piece of paper to begin with, because it's easier to figure out and meet the requirements, and also remember what it is hypothetically. Let's see, what is everybody? I fidget my toes when I'm in the dentist's office, because when someone is actually working on things literally inside of my head, I actually fidget my toes, because it helps me focus on something other than what's going on in my head. So I agree, we all have different things that we do. Again, especially the environment we're living in with all the technology and everything, I think it makes it much more likely that we are doing stuff like this. Just again, back to organizational stuff, events. When there's an event or an appointment or whatever, put the information and location in your calendar when you make the appointment, and that way, especially the location if you can, so that you're ready to go and you're not trying to figure out where you're supposed to be and what the address is and everything like that. You don't have to try to find the address, so it's much easier to just put it all in when you set up the event. Time management. 1 minute rule. If you can take care of it in 1 minute or less, do it, because it's just going to save you time. So the classic example of this, if you drop something on the floor, pick it up right away and put it away rather than just walking past it, which all of us, I think, have done at one point. But it just, again, it's that whole thing, like, the problem is if you don't do the 1 minute things, then they're all going to build up, and then suddenly it's not just 1 minute, it's like a half hour's worth of work, and you have to do dishes. So and I swear to God, I don't always do this, but it's something I strive for. Rinse, like the dishwasher. If the dishwasher is empty and you've eaten something, rinse the plate and just put it in the dishwasher, and that way you don't end up with a mountain of dishes on the counter that you have to do. And then this is, again, really useful, especially in terms of work, but in terms of school, it's really useful to take just 15-20 minutes at end of the day to plan what you're going to do tomorrow. And that's, again, where the little baby index cards are really useful, is you can do that. Or sometimes if I have like a bunch of things to do and they're all fairly quick, I'll just write them on one list that I need to take care of tomorrow. Yep, carrying a head or putting a hairband around your wrist and then snapping it. I know that's another thing that a lot of people do. Okay, here we go. And then checklists. So anything very complicated, especially if it's something that you have to do every year, is really useful to create a checklist. So I have to run for the library tech program. We have a graduation every spring, except for during the pandemic. And I have a checklist that lays out everything I need to do, because there's a lot of stuff I need to remember to do. So like, we have cake, I need to invite different people, I need to reserve different spaces on campus, I need to make sure all the students know, I need to get parking permits. And so I have a checklist for the library tech graduation, so that it's just so much easier on my brain to do this and everything. And that way next year I'm not like, and also I know the timeline I need to keep track of for planning that. So timeline schedule is really important. And then also breaking it into small pieces. But the time, especially for that, if there's something that has a deadline, it's really important that you have a timeline of when you're going to do it. An example for all of you is if you have been called in for a job interview, create a checklist of things that you need to do, and on the schedule when you need to do it. So you need copies of your resume, for example. You should have enough copies for everyone who is interviewing you. And so you need to figure out when you want to print those. When you're going to fill up your gas tank, because you want to make sure your gas tank is full the night before. You don't want to do that on the day of the interview, because sometimes you fill up your gas tank and then your hands smell like gasoline. You don't want that. You want to make sure your interview outfit is ready. And I will tell you from this experience, I personally, my size changes. And so you want to make sure that your interview outfit fits you nicely ahead of time. So like a week ahead of your job interview, make sure your interview outfit is ready to go and everything like that. So you should have sort of a time frame for doing that. Procrastination. Many of us, and I include myself in this at times, how many people struggle with procrastination? Me. Is there anyone in this session who does not struggle with procrastination? Very good. So this is the thing that a little bit, and you know, it really depends, because here's the thing that everyone should keep in mind. Procrastination is not a time management issue. It's an emotional issue. So you are avoiding something is what is going on with procrastination. It's not you don't have the time to do it. It's that I am procrastination. I like that. It's that you're avoiding something. So I have a couple of suggestions. So one is try to figure out why you're avoiding the task. So I've given you a couple of options there. There are, you can actually Google this and like, you can Google like, why do we procrastinate? And actually we'll lay out even more, but there are a few of the ones that I think are the most common. You're afraid you won't succeed. Yes, cleaning to avoid doing things. Avoidance is a classic procrastination strategy. I'm going to especially if you're a library person. Yeah, I'm going to put my books in order. I'm going to clean my bathroom, which is really a sign. If you're cleaning your bathroom, because your bathroom to me is like one of the grossest things you have to clean, and that's really a sign that you're really heavily avoiding this task. So here are a few options for you to think about. So one is you're afraid you won't succeed. So for example, there are 4, I think, scholarships for my students. And I have enabled them, so I have set all of my students up. I require them to do all the pieces that they need to apply for the scholarships as part of the class. And so that it helps them get past the outward doing. But before I started doing that, people were not applying for the scholarships because they're like, oh, I'm not going to get it, so why should I? Oh, procrastination bake. Yes, that's very good. So yeah, so you're afraid you're not going to succeed, so you don't even do it. And if you don't even put your hat in the ring, it's guaranteed that you will not receive the scholarship for the same thing. Sort of similarly, you're afraid of being rejected. And then another one is actually being a perfectionist. So yeah, perfectionism is actually a really hard thing that people struggle with. And that actually, my daughter is a real perfectionist, and trying to get her to do sort of good enough given the situation is really hard sometimes. Another thing that actually may be really useful is if the task is a really big one. So we're going to go back again to, actually we'll do like a job application, right? So like there's an application you need to fill out, or creating your resume, for example. So it seems too big. I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. And then you go off and bake a nice cake, which I'm sure is delicious. What a really good strategy for that is actually break it down into smaller tasks. So like with your resume, for example, I don't need to write the whole resume today. I just need to make a list of all the technology programs that I know, right? And then I need to just make a list of everywhere I worked. And then I need to find the dates of the places I worked. I need to pull together all my references. So you can see if you break it down, then it's going to be a little easier for you to do. Here's a strategy that I have used when I'm really just sort of struggling and everything. And it sounds really weird. And I actually can't even remember if I may have said too long, but even 5 minutes. This sounds really counterintuitive, but I have done it and it's really, really useful. Try doing nothing for 10 minutes. Like, don't look at your phone, put your phone across the room so you're not even tempted to look at it. Sit on the sofa and just sit there and stare into your living room and like sit there like for 5 minutes. And it works really well. And I think most of the time I don't even make 5 minutes. And then I'm like, I've done 2 minutes, I'm ready to go. So it sounds like a really weird strategy, but it's actually really effective. This is really important. So it is really important if you're making decisions, especially major life decisions. I'm going to talk about actually breathing, not so much meditation, but yeah, meditation is good as well. I've got breathing later in the presentation. This is really important for you all to pay attention is when you're trying to make decisions, there's an abbreviation HALT. So be careful about making presentations when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, because your brain isn't working. Your brain is working differently and your decisions will be different if you make decisions in these states. All right, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to get some water. Talk among yourselves, take a break and stand up. We'll get down so much. So let's come back at 4. And I'm going to shut that down. Stop the share. The 4 horsemen of bad decisions. That's excellent. Okay, I'll be back. Talk amongst yourselves, stretch, breathe. I'll be back. Present. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So, oh, hold on. I got to share my screen again. Hold on. Share screen. Yay. Okay. So I, in the chat, listed like the favorite books that some of my favorite books for people. I highly recommend, because most of my students, I have the data on this, most of my students in the library tech program are introverts, like 85%-ish. So the networking for people who hate networking is really good. Worked Upon is a really nice, easy, and I bet SPL owns a lot of these. If not, especially Worked Upon, I know you can get used really easily. There's one, Banish Your Inner Critic, I really love. It's actually designed for anyone who's creative to like sort of help shut down that critical voice in our head. It's actually really useful for anyone who has a critical voice in our head, which is most of us. Choose is a new book, and it has all these really interesting tips about how all this research on how we present ourselves physically, the signals we're sending out physically, and it's really interesting. It's like, if you want people to think you have authority, you need it's research, and it's like, if you think about the space between your shoulders and your ears, if you have more space between your shoulders and your ears, people will you have more authority and everything. So that's why you should like really sit up straight and everything for a job interview. And then How to Talk to Anyone has really, really practical tips for making small talk with people in all sorts of different situations. They're really useful books and everything like that. So I highly recommend those. Okay, so let's get back to the job hunting piece of it. And so I have been teaching job hunting. Okay, are you going to work? Here we go. For my job, can you all see my screen? Just to verify.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I've taught job hunting now for like over a decade, and I do mock interviews with my students. I do resumes, everything like that. And so I know a lot about job hunting, and I'm going to give you some hopefully really practical tips you can use. And then feel free to ask specific questions. And you all can also ask any questions at the end of the presentation, because I suspect this is where you're going to have more questions, actually. Here we go. So what is the most important thing you can do to find a job? Looking, very good. Make friends, that's close. Apply, yep. Anyone? Okay. Networking. Yay! Okay. So what is professional networking? Asking other people, that's part of it. Are there any introverts in the room? I'm an introvert, although people often think I'm an extrovert, because especially if I'm hanging out with other introverts, I'm very chatty. Nice. Introvert with anxiety. Very good. Having a continuous professional connection where you can exchange industry info. The reason why I asked about introversion is because I think this stuff freaks introverts out more than average. So professional, so this is, and also I think people sometimes have what I refer to as they think of networking as sort of a used car salesman situation, like, hi, I'm Pam, nice to meet you. Let's see what we can, and what business we can do together, that sort of thing. So, but this is what I want all of you to think of. Networking is just connecting to other people and sharing information and resources and helping other people and getting to know other people. So it's actually, you're just getting to know other people and hopefully forming an actual connection. So I'm going to talk about it professionally. It's actually really important in everything. So I know this, like, as a mother, I've picked up all sorts of information about like what my kids should be doing, like what deadlines. My daughter, who's actually volunteering for Sacramento Public Library, is going to be a senior this year. So I'm like, what are the deadlines does she need to meet? What deadlines do we need to pay attention to, and things like that. And so it's important for all sorts of things, not just for job hunting, but for job hunting, it is actually the most important thing. There are all sorts of things that happen with networking. For example, a lot of people think that jobs are posted. Often you find out about jobs through network. So I always jokingly say that I'm like the Kevin Bacon of the local library community, because I run a program that trains people to work in libraries. And so I have connections at pretty much every library in the area. And so I, like, for my the people who go through my program, if I get people send me listings for jobs saying, do you know any students? I'm like, oh yeah, I have a perfect student. I'll send it right over to that student. And my students have gotten jobs because of my network and everything like that. So it's really critical. And there are all sorts of other things, like interviewing, for example. So if you know someone at the organization and everything, you have that connection, so you network to that. When you come in for an interview, you can ask that person, okay, how should I dress for a job interview? So I had one student who was actually he was trying to apply for a state job as a wildlife ecologist. And if you know anything about those people, they wander around the landscape of California in hiking boots and jeans. But I have friends who work in that field, and I'm like, how should you dress for the interview? And they're like, it's formally like a regular job interview, things like that. So I have a lot of inside information, particularly with interviewing. It's really useful. LinkedIn is the most important piece of networking. And do you all know what LinkedIn is? Anyone? LinkedIn is essentially, let's see, it's the professional version of Facebook. So this is my LinkedIn profile. This is LinkedIn. Here's my profile. View profile. So look, I have a little profile photo. This is a little description. You're going to edit all of this, and then you start adding experience and everything like that. You just add information. This is what I want you to remember about LinkedIn is, well, number one, you do need an actual profile photo of some sort there. And it needs to be sort of professional. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the thing I want you to remember about LinkedIn is that it is about connection and not perfection. So it's about connecting to other people, and it's a tool to allow you to do that. Okay. So profile photo doesn't have to be a headshot or anything super professional. This is what I recommend. Get a profile photo, have a friend or loved one who you really like. Take your photo with the neutral background outside where the lighting is good. And the reason why I always say someone you like is because you need to be smiling in your profile photo. And if it's someone you really like, your smile will actually be more pleasant, natural. This is a really useful thing. So my LinkedIn URL, which is attached to my profile, you all can get actual business cards made. There's some really cheap places to get it. There's one place called Overnight Prints that is super cheap. Overnight Prints, not Vernite Print. Oh, Overnight Prints. And then get your profile set up to sort of a minimum level, and then put that URL on your business card. And that way, when you're meeting people, you have business card, and then put them in your wallet, put a few in your wallet. And then when you meet people, you can give it to them. And that way, if like a job opportunity, or you just happen to meet someone, because here's the thing about networking, you do not know who people know or are connected to. And so you want to, if you're looking for a job, for example, you want to sort of tell everyone that you're looking for a job. And actually, this is something that happens, I think, when people lose their jobs. Sometimes they feel a little hesitant about losing their jobs. And it's like, no, you shouldn't feel hesitant about losing your job. Just tell people you know, because you never know who people know. So for example, my husband worked for HP. If you're trying to get into the computer field, then you would want to be connected to me. Or I have a lot of friends, as I mentioned, who do like wildlife ecology stuff, work in that field. And so if you're trying to get in that field, I'm a good person, because on LinkedIn, all of my people are linked there. And then I had one student, for example, who was trying to find someone in the library at like the University of Arizona. And she asked me if I knew anyone there. And I'm like, no, but let me ping my network. And then I pinged my network of librarians, and sure enough, one of my network knew someone who worked at University of Arizona, and I was able to connect them. So you never know who people know and who they're connected to. And that's why you want to be on LinkedIn. It just enables networking a lot easier, and enables you to communicate with people without having to like keep track of things and everything like that. You just need to be connected to them on LinkedIn. And by the way, you all are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn after this session. I'm always happy to have people connect to me. Just make sure when you contact me, if you could let me know I was in the SPL session and I would like to connect with you, and that way I know who, I have some idea of where I know you from. But I'm always happy to add people to my networking. Another networking trip is informational interviews. So informational interviews, anyone know what an informational interview is? It's looking like not. Nope. Okay, cool. So some people know, some people don't. I'm just going to explain it. So an informational interview is you just contact someone in the field you want to go into, and you say, hey, I would like to talk to you about your job. And do you have some time for me? You can totally Google, as with everything else, you can just Google this and how to do an informational interview. But all you do is you have a nice little conversation. You don't want to take up too much of their time, although sometimes people like really love talking to you. And so librarians are great for informational interviews, because we all love sharing information and talking to other people and everything like that. But this is the most important part of the informational interview. At the end of the informational interview, this is how you use it as a networking tool. At the very end, after you've talked to them and thanked the person, because you really want to thank them, you may want to send them a thank you note, everything like that. If you do it in person, and you want to treat it sort of not as much like a job interview, but if you're doing it in person, you want to dress professionally. If you're doing it on Zoom, you want to, behave professionally, all that sort of thing. Make sure your background is good background, all that sort of stuff. The most important thing at the end of the interview, you ask, is there anyone else you think I should talk to? And then they will probably say, oh yeah, you should talk to Crystal over at Sacramento Public Library. She's great. And then you have an informational interview with Crystal. And then you ask Crystal the same question. And then Crystal gives you another name to talk to. And that's how you expand your network and you talk to people. Okay. This is one that I really recommend because so I actually have, it's too bad my camera isn't working, and also I'm moving and it's somewhere in my house and I don't know where. I have, so you want to create a folder both online and in person that has all your, hold on a second. Let me ask the question. What do you do if you have multiple industries that you are pursuing for a LinkedIn profile? Our performance art, starting to work in childcare. Okay. Okay, Crystal, see, Crystal, librarian is happy to do an informational interview. Okay, I'm not sure actually about, I think your best bet is to actually do informational interviews so you connect people in those different industries would be a really good strategy for you. And then once you have that connection, like I said, LinkedIn profile is again about connection, not perfection. So you want to sort of get it to a minimal level and then go. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is I always remember this. There was a young man who was very impressive. He came and spoke at City College. He was a speaker, and I went up to him afterwards and I was like, oh, you did such a great job. I'd love to connect you are you on LinkedIn? And he said, no, I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm waiting until, I'm through with law school, or, I can't remember exactly what. I could tell that he wanted his profile to sort of be at a certain level, and he didn't want to appear on there until his profile, he sort of felt he was at that level. And afterwards, I thought that is totally the wrong strategy, because if he goes on LinkedIn and starts connecting to people via LinkedIn, his career will actually move along faster rather than waiting for his profile to be perfect. So I want all of you to keep that in mind. It really is about connection, not perfection. And then the other thing I always remember, there was a friend of mine and we were talking about, she felt a little awkward about reaching out to people she'd met like one time and connected on LinkedIn and felt weird about connecting to them and asking them questions. And then I just said to her, you feel weird when people out of the 1 year later you've talked to one time say, hey, we met at that conference. I have a question. Do you mind answering? And she said no. And I'm like, well, there's your answer. And it's like, people don't generally mind that. So don't feel hesitate about that. Okay, back to jobs binder folder. Have everything ready to go, because there are jobs. For example, Sacramento Public Library often has jobs, and the job ad will say, accepting will close by Friday afternoon at 5 or the first 50 applicants. Well, they close well before 5 p.m. on Friday because they hit 50 applicants really soon. So you really want to have everything ready to go. And so you want to have copies of everything. So this is what I recommend: resumes, cover letter, transcripts, letters of recommendations, list of reference. And then this is really critical. Applications are the most annoying part of any job, of the whole job hunting thing. I have, and I'm not joking, and it's a big binder. I have almost every application I've ever filled out, maybe not all of them. People are switching jobs more often. Keep a bunch of copies of old applications, because applications will always ask for the same information, but in slightly different formats. And so once you fill out an application one time, you don't want to have to figure out that again. So it'll say, how much money did you earn per year? How much money did you earn per week? How much were you paid hourly? Those are 3 different applications, same information, but it's formatted slightly differently. And then I also, and it's too bad you can't see this, but my jobs binder, I have everything in a big binder all together, and it's in sheet protectors, which I know many of you will love to use if you like being organized. And so I have different sections of the binder that has my transcripts, has my resume, cover letters, list of recommendation, list of references, and then all the applications. So in general, when you are sort of starting to really look for a job, this is what I recommend to my students. Really want to think about 3 to 5 qualities about yourself that you're going to sort of wind through all of your application materials and certainly when you're in the interview. So if you, and most people have this issue, most of us are unaware of how we present to the world, and often, especially if you lack confidence, you don't understand your best qualities. And so if you can't figure it out on your own, ask your friends and loved ones who are going to be nice about it and say, okay, I want to know what are my best 3 qualities that you think I would bring to a job. So for example, for me, it's like being organized. It could be one thing, like creative is what I would say. I'm tech savvy, stuff like that. I like playing around with technology, things like that, as well as, really enjoying working with people and everything like that. So, and then you can use those and you can talk about them in the interview when you, and I'll get to that later. And then also when we do resumes, you can put them on your resume, and I'll talk about that in a minute. This is really critical when you actually get down to, you found a job you want to apply for, you really want to sit down. If you can print out the job ad, print it out on a piece of paper because it's sort of easier to read and circle things. If not, make sure you keep a copy of the job ad because they actually disappear sometimes and then you can't get back to it. So make sure you keep copies of the things that you're applying for. And then this will actually give you the language that you need to make sure you include on your resume and your application materials. And especially in something like if you're applying for a state job, it's really critical that you actually literally pull the language from the job listing and put it on your application and on your resume and cover letter. Okay, so keep a copy of everything. You want to sit down and you want to look at the job ad and say, all right, you mentioned responsible for managing groups of people. Well, you need to, and that's like supervision and things like that, and managing. So that's one category. You want to sort of figure out, we're back to categories, and you want to sort of figure out the categories that they need for this job. Do they need someone who is good at attention to details? Do they need someone who has good people skills? All that stuff. All right. Back. Hold on, I lost track of what I'm doing. Job ad. Okay. Cover letters, you all can Google this. T-style is my favorite. It's super easy. And actually, it's another reason to keep a copy of the job. So what you do is, it's basically, the top part is the same. So, put date, salutation. You write a really short paragraph at the top about you're applying for the specific position, and then below that you have 2 columns. On the left column is what they're looking for, so you pull like the main things from the job ad, and then on the right you say how you meet that qualification. And it's super easy and easy for anyone who is screening you to sort of figure out, oh, this person is a good choice to bring in for an interview. Because cover letters and resumes, the whole point of cover letters and resumes is to just get you into the interview. Very good. Perfect. Resumes. So employers, I've seen 6 seconds. I've seen 30 seconds. Somewhere between that is how long people are reviewing. So your resume needs to be like really easy to read. I really recommend creating a master resume like on a Google Doc. And this is something that if you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. This is something that you would break down into chunks. Like I was saying, like, okay, I just need to make a list of all the technology skills I know, all the programs I know. Tomorrow, I'm going to make a list of all my references if you need to put that on the resume. The next day, I'm going to make a list of all the places I've worked. And then the day after that, I'm going to make sure I have the addresses correct. And then the day after that, I'm going to have the supervisor. So put that into a small things. And then you can pull chunks out of this to have resumes that you use for specific job postings. The most important thing is action verbs and details. Be specific. So the thing that my students will often do before I've trained them is who are working in libraries, and they're like, well, I work in a library, I process library materials. What library materials are you processing? Are you processing CDs? Are you processing DVDs? More details just gives the person who is screening you more information, and also helps anchor it in your brain. I also like to talk about like Starbucks, for example, right? So if you have worked at a Starbucks, what type of Starbucks is it? Is it a drive-through? Is it the Starbucks at a Target? Because those people are always slammed. Is it just a regular Starbucks and everything, but really busy? And you work in the morning and everything? More detail is always better. And this is something that I really recommend. I tend to nudge people away from listing an objective, and this is why an objective, because the objective is usually phrased as, I'm looking for a position that challenges me and where I can learn blah blah blah. That is actually, that doesn't help the employer at all. That is about what you are looking for, not what the employer is. Instead of an objective at the top of your resume, use those 3 to 5 qualities that you've come up with in bold across the top of your resume, before, like right below your name. And that's actually, I think, a lot more effective than an objective. Remember, 6 seconds. Good format and fonts. Fonts matter. I'm gonna look at our time. I think we have time for this. This is really one of my favorite YouTubes. Of course, we've got an ad.
Is there any sound for the video? I don't.
Oh, wait, sorry, thank you. Hold on. Damn it, screen sharing. All right, you know what? I'm gonna skip, but just Google Papyrus SNL. It's one of my favorite. Ryan Gosling is obsessed with the font that the person used to create the avatar logo. If you like things like that, it's really funny. Anyway, fonts actually matter. So no Times New Roman ever on a resume, ever. It will date your resume. Also, you also need the other thing I always tell my students is make sure you have a plain email address with some version of your name that you can use to apply for jobs. Just for jobs, create an email address. And I suspect that none of you are using anything old. I run into people who sometimes have like an AOL address or a Yahoo address. And I'm like, wow, nothing says 1990s like a Yahoo address on your resume. So Gmail is what you want to do, and just make sure it's some version of your name, and that's it. Okay, here we go. Whoops, boop. Come on. Okay, now we're back on track. Okay, public sector hiring. This is really critical because most people do not understand this. So public sector hiring is any sort of government job. So federal, so the federal government, the state of California, county and city jobs, as well as teachers I know fall into this category. And I'm sure there are other random areas that fall into this category. The whole hiring process is controlled by a basic idea that everybody has to be treated equitably. And so everybody is treated the same way as much as possible. And this means that you are literally being scored with numbers on everything involving your hiring application, everything like that. So when I have been on a hiring committee and I screen applications, I am actually scoring the applications based on whatever it has to be attached to, at least in my organization, it has to be attached to whatever the job posting is, but like, I'll give you an example, the like criteria. One is actually the quality of the application, meaning, did you actually do what you were supposed to do? So you need to follow directions carefully. So if they say 2 letters of recommendation, you want to submit 2 letters of recommendation, not 3 letters of recommendation. If they say they want a reference from within the last 5 years, that's what you need to submit. And then, so that's one. We usually do equity, diversity, inclusion, and then it's based on things we're looking for a job. So library experience or not, and then ability to work with technology, and then something else. And so that's what you're looking at on the application. And then during the interview, this is happening as well. So public sector hiring, the interviews are quite different. It's usually going to be a panel. You're going to come in and it is not a conversation. So you need to get used to, this is why preparing for interviewing, especially public sector interviewing, you need to be really prepared and get used to talking about yourself, because it's not going to be a conversation. They will ask you the interview question. They may not even be allowed to ask you follow-up questions, even if you have completely messed up. So this is the most important thing to do and to be aware of in terms of the math in that situation, is that you cannot completely blow any one question, or the math will not work in your favor and it's too hard to recover. Even if you do really well on the other questions, if you completely blow one question, they will not be able to hire you. And this is true even for people who are hiring from within the organization. They may know, like the people on the panel may know and love you and really want you to get the job, but they can only hire you based on how well you do in the interview. And if you really mess up the interview, they cannot hire you. It's not possible. So does anyone have any questions about public sector hiring? All right. So yeah, interview won't be a conversation. You just have to get used to. It's true. You can keep going. And this is something else you want to keep in mind. You may interview with the same organization more than one time. So you always want to be positive, because even if you don't get that interview, you've learned stuff from doing the interview. And then you also know how the interview works, and you've also made an impression. They may like you, and then they may, I don't know, it totally depends on the organization whether this is all right, but they may, if they know you, they may say, hey, let's work on some coaching, interview coaching. And I'm going to tell you this, the best strategy I have to deal with this is what is called behavioral interviewing and the STAR method. And you can, again, Google it. And what you do is you lay out the situation, task, action, and results. I'm not going to go into this in depth because we don't have time, but basically it's going to help you make sure you don't give like one-word answers. It's going to make sure you have a lot of detail in what you're talking about, things like that. So that's something else. Again, you want to Google the STAR method in behavioral interviewing. So prepare, 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 prepare. I don't know if you can tell. Okay, big thing is actually de-stressing, especially on the day of the interview. So these are a couple of tips that I have. Google potential interview questions. This you would not want to do on the day of the interview, but to prepare. So you could say librarian interview questions, and then you can sort of see what may be out there. Listen to happy music on the way to the interview. A phrase that's really useful actually is to say, I'm really excited, because I know that personally, if I say I've got this, my brain can talk me out of that. Like I can say, oh no, you don't. You may, what if you totally, you can start doing all the scenarios where it may not work out, but just saying I'm excited instead sort of gets you in the right frame of mind. I am not kidding about looking at photos of baby animals before your interview or any stressful situations. If you have to give a speech, anything like that. I am not kidding. I have done this, and it actually, there's research showing this is good. The power pose, and I put spelled it like my name, but so what you want to do, you're essentially standing, you want to do this in a place where you're not going to be visible. So like go into the bathroom and and do this like in a restroom stall or just in the bathroom so you feel less self-conscious. But if you go stand essentially like Wonder Woman with your hands on your hips, your legs splayed out, and do that for like 2 minutes and everything like that, you will actually, puppies or kittens are good. You will actually build up your confidence instead of like studying at the last minute, like, oh, studying your resume or anything like that. Breathing, the 4-4-4 breathing. And this is where you breathe in for 4, a count of 4, and then you hold it for 4, and then you breathe out slowly for 4, as if you want to visualize a candle in front of you. You're not trying to blow out the candle. So really soft, soft breathing. So we're going to do it together. So here we go. Everybody, we're all going to breathe. We're all going to do the breathing. So breathe in for a count of 4. Hold it for 4. Let it out softly for 4. And one more time. Breathe in for 4. Hold it for 4. Softly. So that is actually, it causes a physiological reaction. It tricks your brain into making your brain thinks you're more relaxed than you are if you do that. So if you keep doing it, and the beautiful thing about that breathing is you can actually do it in the interview to calm yourself down, but it will literally change your physiology. And then of course, smiling is really critical. It's important in terms of talking to the panel, but also it will improve your mood and you'll feel more confident. So you want to do, again, during the interview, you want to use those 3 to 5 qualities. And then this is another thing you want to keep in mind. You want to remember people you're interviewing may be trapped in a room with the interview panel for at least one day, if not several days. It's usually like a conference room. There's fluorescent lighting. I will tell you, having done many panels, that people start to blur together at times. So something unique, if you can come up with something slightly unique that you can use as a story in your interview to respond to one of the questions. So I had a student and I'm like, wow, that's pure gold. He taught chess to children. And I'm like, you need to come up with some sort of story that you use using the STAR method, because that has all sorts of goodness in terms of being a good interview story, and it's also unique, so they're going to remember you a little more. Okay, interview questions. This is tell us a little bit about yourself. I call it Wallaby. So this is really one of the most important pieces of it. Make sure that the interviewers know that you want to work for this specific organization and you're not trying to get a job anywhere. And then, for example, for Sacramento Public Library, and I can't remember how they're doing hiring. For example, if they were hiring for the system, you want to make sure that you're like really excited to work for Sacramento Public Library. If you know for sure that you're hiring for a specific branch, for example, you would want to say, oh, I would love to work at the Fair Oaks branch. That's my community branch. It's part of my community. I would really love to work with. So that's a really critical thing that you can say in that first interview question. And that, by the way, this is the one that you really want to rehearse and have it fully written out and everything like that. And then basically what I always have my students do is you actually want to, and you can do this based on the stuff I'm just about to show you, you want to create a master interview document like in Google so that you can just keep adding to it. Covers like the main categories and things that you're likely to do, and write out a long version of your answers, like your stories for these specific questions. And then you want, once you've written the long version, create an outline version that you can take with you into the interview so that if your brain short circuits, then you're okay. Okay, so strengths and weaknesses are actually not as hard. Strengths, always people think it's basically stuff you like to do at work and stuff you don't like to do at work. The only thing is there are certain weaknesses I would never actually bring up in an interview. I wouldn't bring up anything to do with, I don't like to work with people. And it doesn't even have to be a general thing, but like, oh, I don't want to work with children. I don't want to work with old people. I don't want to work with teens. You never want to do that in any sort of job. It's good to be prepared with some sort of story about something that didn't go well. So these can be all sorts of things, but I can tell you, my example is that I was teaching a Zoom session and I forgot to set it up so that everybody was muted when they entered, and someone flushed their toilet in the middle of my recording. And so next time, so I learned. The main thing to indicate with something that didn't go well is what you learned from that. Number one, don't choose anything that's really bad, but also what did you learn and how did you change based on that? I'd be prepared for something depending on the field, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then you can all look at these later. These are like the main categories that you are likely to hit in any job interview. And that's when reviewing that job ad is really useful, because it's like, oh, they need teamwork, people skills, technology, and time management. And then you're pretty well prepared for the interview, and then they may have a specific thing. It depends on the interview. And then odds and ends. So this is, you always want to remember this. You can never control whether you get the job, only how well you interview. And the other thing is take notes right after the interview, especially like interview questions, and then keep track of your interview questions, especially to the best of your ability, especially if you're going to keep interviewing in the same field. We all struggle with that's essentially when I always do it when I'm talking about it. Your mouth is filling in while your brain is catching up, essentially. And all you need to do to avoid doing the is just talk a little more slowly. And the other thing, and you're not going to sound like you're in slow motion, because most people, when they're nervous, I'm doing it again. Most people, when they're nervous, and to talk more quickly. So the other benefit of this is that it will slow you down in that way as well. Resting angry face, which is sometimes called resting bleep face. What you want to do, and you need to do this in front of a mirror, because many of us have this. What you want to do is go in front of a mirror and sit there and do a really big smile. And then little by little, let your smile drop until it stops completely. What you want to do is stop right before your mouth completely drops. That last thing before it goes completely into resting angry face. And your lips are just going to be up at the corners just a little bit, and then you won't have that expression on your face. And again, if you don't know the vocabulary in an interview, always ask. There are two reasons for this. Number one, if you make an assumption about the vocabulary and you get it wrong, you have then blown the interview question. The other thing is you may actually know what this is, you just didn't quite connect, your brain wasn't working or something like that. And so you want to say something like, I just want to make sure I understand this. Can you please explain, can you please remind me what library programming is? So library programming are all the programs that libraries do, like this one, not computer stuff. So I always remember I had a student who assumed it was the computer stuff and then blew that particular question. If your brain shuts down in the middle of the interview, ask if you can return to the question at the end, and then hopefully your brain may have restarted again. And then, like today, always assume that technology will fail and have backups. And this is particularly if you, of course, are doing a Zoom interview, but I had multiple options. Like I had my phone ready to go if I had to do that. I had in case I couldn't connect to Canva, which is where I'm doing this presentation, I had a PDF version of this that I could have used. So your best option as a backup, if you're like doing a presentation, is see if you can make a print copy of something. If not, at least save like a PDF on your phone so that you have it and can refer to it if the technology fails. And then the other thing is, if the technology does fail in an interview, the most important thing is that you don't freak out, because we all know technology fails. And so how you react to that is actually, you will be judged on how you're reacting to that. then, of course, don't forget to thank the panel. And then I gave you the book recommendations at the end, and then we're at questions. So I'm gonna, oh, and then here, I'm gonna leave my email there for a second, and then I'm gonna stop the share. I'll put my email in the chat so you all, and I'm serious when I say, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you wish.
Thank you so much, Pam. That was a lot of really great information. The recording of this session will be on our website. So if there's any part that you would like to go back and review, please do that. I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time. And if you haven't had a chance to do the survey yet, I'm going to put that there too. So thank you again, Pam, and Monica, over to you.
Thanks. It looks like we did have a question from one of our teens regarding interviews. Can you go in for another interview if the first time didn't work out?
Oh yes, that's actually, I thought you actually said you could go in for, you can totally go in for more than one interview. That's what I was saying when I said you're going to learn stuff from the first interview, which is, so the other thing that's a really good strategy for especially stressful situations, if you sort of think of it as like an experiment or a game. So instead of thinking of things as like, oh my God, I need to get this job and everything, especially if you've never interviewed or anything like that, and you don't know how it's going to work, you know, obviously you probably want to try to get the job, but if you can sort of think, especially afterwards, think, okay, I didn't get it. That's okay. I'm going to be fine. I learned, what did I learn from this situation? That's the most important thing when something doesn't go the way you want. And then what do I want to do differently next time? And then the other thing is, if the next time you still don't do it right, don't beat yourself up. It takes time to form new habits or make changes. So like, the real key is don't beat yourself up and just keep trying. And you can definitely interview more than once. So you're going to learn stuff from the other interview. They're also going to meet you. And then sometimes people are like, well, we couldn't hire this person for this thing, but we have this other thing that they'd be perfect for. And sometimes people reach out for that. And also, you also might be able to connect with those people as part of your professional network and do like an informational interview with them. Did that answer your question?
Manai, did we get that question answered for you? You can also go on mic if you'd like.
They said yes.
Yes.
Good,
Cool.
good.
Okay, so I think unless we have any other questions, I don't think we do.
It's not so much questions that
Oh,
a question that I have. It's more just like a statement. I would like to thank Pam for this organization thing, because I understand a lot more now about why I procrastinate with that one slide. So I understand that a whole lot more now. And also, I want to say thank you to you guys for doing this whole event, because it has been, every week, it has been a whole big helpful thing for me being a young adult. So I would like to thank you guys so much for all this. Again, it's just been a huge help. I appreciate it.
you are most welcome. And
Yes, you're very welcome.
I really appreciate that you have been able to make it to all of the sessions each week. We've really appreciated your input. So thank you, Felicia.
And I'm serious when I say like please reach out to me if you have any questions about, because this was like lightning speed, super fast and everything. And I provided a huge amount of information. So if you have it, especially about job hunting, or you need any advice about job hunting, please feel free to reach out to me. And like I said, LinkedIn is really the best way to keep in touch with me. So that's a really good way to do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again, Pam. Thanks for everyone that was here today. And and then there was a question about where to watch the sessions that were missed. I will put that link in the chat again. There you go. So that will have each week's recordings. And I believe we are behind 1 or 2 weeks on that. So we'll be putting those up by the end of the week. And then, yes, and Molly, I know we have your information. I have a list of everyone's attendance, and we'll be working on completing those certificates, getting those to you. I've had to do them all manually, so it's taken a long time. So I'm sorry about that, but I promise you, each and every one of you will get them. And then I did see, Chris, are you still on here? I saw, yes. I will double check to see if your items have made it there and let you know when they're ready, but I'll email you. Okay, thanks so much. All right, I guess we will stop recording, and thank you. And I'm going to put my email here as well. If anyone has any questions about either future programs, if we do a program like this again, or any internships, we do offer internships. We'll be doing internships again in the fall, paid internships. If you're interested in library work and all that, feel free to reach out. So Monica, do you want to take us out?
Yes, Crystal, thank you. And everyone, thank you for attending Adult 101 Life Skills for Teens, Personal Organization and Time Management with Pam Pose, Professor Librarian at Sacramento City College. This workshop was made possible by funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Please take a moment to fill out the survey linked in the chat so that we can continue offering programs like this in the future and learn how to make them even better. Can you imagine? If you're not already signed up for the upcoming sessions, that's okay. As Crystal said, these are all recorded and we'll be heading to the website as dropped in the link. Thanks so much, everyone.